Just the lady at the back there. On the there we go. On the far right, not the far right. You know. It's most of the audience probably.
I'm a woman. I can't be on the far right.
Oh yeah, that's right.
And actually, that was the point I was going to make, because in my last session, I went to the one on toxic culture in politics, and Dolan Cummins, who was on the platform, said that in the past, the left would be on a march singing a song, "We hate the Tories, we hate the Tories, we hate the Tories, Tories, we hate you." And then you'd kind of join them because you also hate the Tories, so therefore you must be left-wing. And I really agreed with your point about the fact that, you know, if you're black, you're left-wing. You're a radical left-winger. And so those people who are black who support the right wing, they're, going against the cause. But I wanted to just ask a question. I am a teacher, so there are lots of things that I'm not allowed to say, including plastics in the ocean isn't the biggest problem that the children face. But I did have a child. I'm a primary school teacher. I teach year 6. And I had a child last year who was LGBT. And we had a difficult conversation in the summer term where we said to her, we're not going to let you change your name on the register because we have 4-year-olds in the school that we would have to explain it all to everybody in the school. It's not a good time for you to do this. Wait till you go to secondary school and, then you can explore it a bit more. But I had lots of conversations with her mum who said, don't tell her dad, because they hadn't talked about it yet. But the biggest problem that I think professionals and parents are coping with in terms of this sort of issue is the question of suicide, the worry of suicide and the worry of mental health. And I just wondered whether you'd kind of found out anything about how this feeds into the woke culture. Because as a parent, if your child says, if you don't let me do this, I'm going to commit suicide, where do you go with that? And as a teacher, where do you go with that? Because the last thing you want to do is find that a child has committed suicide and you feel like it's your fault. And I think that's that mental health thing and the suicide thing is where these things become quite powerful.
I think, Douglas, you'll know more, you've done more research into that.
I spoke to quite a lot of people for this book who themselves had transitioned or started transitioning and stopped, and also the parents of people who had. And I now fairly regularly find at events and other things people coming up to me who are in this position. The first thing is, I think that down the road we will discover that there is some crossover of mental illness and what we put into part of the trans thing. And that I think we're going to discover that autism in particular, I'm not saying that's the same thing as mental illness, but there's a crossover of autism with trans claims in particular. And that's already, I've just in my own research, I've come across too many cases of this. A child is diagnosed to be autistic and somewhere down the road then says trans. So this needs really careful picking apart. As for this specific thing, look, the idea in Britain and America at the moment is you have to affirm that once a child says they're trans, you have to affirm, because everything that isn't affirmed. I have a quote from an American doctor who says this very clearly. She says, what's the price of not affirming your child's identity? It's not having a child. Agree with me or your child will commit suicide. Wow. What a thing to just wave through. My own view would be on this, I think the right thing, with a child of that age, and the school should not decide to do a free-fall. I think there's far more trauma in my own experience of looking at this. There's far more trauma in all of the other children being told that at any point they may change sex than in trying to hold that line at least during the school years. And I think that we have a big problem as a society if we're held hostage by people threatening their own lives at us. This is a really tricky one. I don't need to tell you that. But in most situations, if somebody says, do what I want or I may kill myself, we try to be understanding, but we're not infinitely so. Like, we're not completely blackmailed into anything they want us to be blackmailed into by that. This is a hellish area. I don't envy all the teachers and others who have to deal with it at the front line.
I think really, for me, the problem is we haven't been able to have the conversations. And I think particularly when it comes to children. I saw a documentary about trans kids, which was on the BBC. And there was an American couple, and the man was saying, I love looking at my child now because I see my little girl running. I don't have to look at my little boy mincing about. And what is really happening there is he's fixing a gay kid, isn't he? I mean, and I do worry about this idea that there's a kind of rehabilitated homophobia at the bottom of this. Yes. That really a tomboy could just be. I mean, from my view, what is wrong with a boy behaving in traditionally masculine ways, or a boy behaving in a traditionally feminine way, or a girl behaving in a traditionally masculine way? If we really believe, we shouldn't be trying to fix, because actually this stuff that about someone saying they don't fit into a traditional gender, this is very conservative. I think there's a really conservative view of gender at the heart of the trans ideology, and that we need to have those. We just haven't had the discussion.
This is it. The trans thing runs against gay and it runs against women, and that's why it's causing so much pain. Because it's the same thing with the non-binary thing, which I don't believe in. The non-binary thing says, I'm a male, but I'm feeling a little bit, female today. What is that?
Yeah.
What is that?
Well, we used to call that sexism.
Right.
I mean, there was a video with Sam Smith saying, I've realised there's a woman within me. And what he's doing is pouting and dancing like a whore.
Right.
So that's what he thinks being a woman is.
Yes. Yeah.
So, okay. Why don't we take two? We should
go to the back.
Go to the back, absolutely. So right at the back with the blue top and the white shirt. It's very nice. Yep.
Well, is this working?
Yeah.
I started working on or looking at the trans issue back in 2015 because I was invited to do something on gender-neutral parenting here, and I discovered all this stuff. And what I discovered, and what I think that this is about, is I discovered that by that time, all of the professional ethics standards, all of the kind of laws that are now being brought to bear on this issue in the States had already been written or had already been accepted. And it was, I think that ultimately this is about the replacement of social norms with bureaucratically imposed social norms. And I think that what happened in the States is that after the successful campaign for gay marriage, you had this vast infrastructure of campaigners who wanted something else to do. And so, literally by 2015, the ethical recommendations of the American Association of Psychologists said that if you cannot affirm your patient's gender identity, you should not be treating that patient. It's just incredible.